I gave you my non-spoiler review, and then I gave you a spoiler-filled discussion. Now it's time for me to finally give you my final thoughts on Metroid Dread. It is now November. The game has been out pretty much a month at this point. So now that the hype has died down, and now that we have a clearer mindset, having after played the game and beaten it multiple times, what do I actually think of the game? Do I still hold to my original thoughts in my review, or have things changed since then? I wanted to beat the game a few more times since my last review, and because I wanted to make sure I could get everything out of it that I possibly could, that there wasn't some secret I missed, or that my opinions didn't change in any particular aspect of the game. At this point, I've beaten the game at least 6 times. I've 100%ed it twice. I've done 2 speed runs, a 4-hour hard mode run and a 2-hour normal mode run, and I've just played through the game regularly in normal mode as well. And to be honest, my thoughts haven't changed that much. I still hold to my thoughts that the game is almost a masterpiece. There's so many modern aspects and details in this game that really make it stand out amongst all the other Metroid games. I mentioned it in the past video, but it's going to be really hard to ever go back and play any of the older Metroid games again, because Dread is just so far ahead of them in a league of its own. It's taken like the exploration aspects of Super Metroid, the sort of story elements of Metroid Fusion, and I guess the gameplay style of Samus Returns, the speed of Zero Mission, and just created just a beautiful work of art with all of those aspects. And the thing is, it's as close to as perfect as you could possibly get. And it really amazes me that we got a Metroid game that pleases almost everyone. It really is the game we all wanted for so many years. It's a heavier focus on story, more lore implications, fluid gameplay, just doing everything you could ever hope and dream and want from a Metroid game. And it really is incredible to think about. I still hold to my opinions that the controls are some of the best of any game I have ever played, if not the best. You feel like you're in control 100% of the time. There was never a moment where I felt like I was controlling a character. Everything I wanted to do was just so seamless and snappy, and it happened exactly when I wanted it to happen. I was in complete control all of the time. The smooth 60 FPS just kept the gameplay going at such a great pace, and you never felt like momentum was ever being broken. And I think that's what lends to the speedrunning part of it as well. I've never speedrun games before. I genuinely don't care for that sort of thing. If anything, it ruins the experience for me. But Dread is it's crafted in such a way that speedrunning is encouraged and it feels natural. Because the game is so fast and because the paths are right there and you don't feel like you're breaking anything, it feels natural and very welcoming to want to speedrun the game. And that's such a brilliant... I have to really applaud it for that. It may have changed my opinion on it, to say the least. It's a whole part of the game itself, if we're being completely honest. The speedrunning aspect just makes sure this game is infinitely replayable. You could be constantly replaying this, trying to get a better time, trying to study every possible route, every break and glitch you can exploit. I do want to bring up as well, unrelated to the gameplay, a lot of people in their reviews downplay the music. I will admit, okay, it is weaker than the prime games or Super Metroid or Zero Mission because it's not melodic. It's a more atmospheric and ambient soundtrack. But I'm one of the few that will defend it. I think it works really well. There are a few memorable tunes, admittedly not a lot, but a few in there that really stand out, I think. And I think they all do their part really well. Berenia, in particular, it's become my favorite area in any Metroid game, I think, because it's so immersive and isolating, and just the feeling you can get is just... Literally, as I'm talking about this right now, I'm half tempted to just boot up the game and go run through that area again, because it's so looking at the backgrounds and seeing all just the little details, the structures, the buildings, how the aquatic life interactors, just there's so much to it that's just it really is incredible the amount of detail put in. But I feel the music in general, it does a very fantastic job at building up that tension and suspense. You feel bombarded and overwhelmed in the beginning. You feel helpless, and it kind of borrows the musical philosophy the developers had with the Prime trilogy, where the only sort of upbeat tracks you should hear are at the very beginning and at the end, and everything else should be toned down and make you feel sort of claustrophobic. And Dread really takes that philosophy and runs with it, because from the moment the title screen hits, the only sort of upbeat track in the entire game is literally the end credit song. Everything else is in service of the world it's trying to create. Everything else is about giving you the feeling of dread, giving you this loneliness and isolation, and making you feel powerful, but making you cautious and sometimes creeped out and sometimes like a badass. The music, I think, really does a great job, and a lot of people downplay it. I think people are being a bit too harsh on the soundtrack. I have, to be fair, people are saying it isn't bad. They're just saying it's weak, and I'll give them that at the very least. Similar to my review, the story is the only thing that kind of I have any negatives about, really. I've done a few videos since then about the story and the lore, studying the backgrounds, what it all means. And the backgrounds in some of these areas really have a lot of implications for the deeper Metroid mythology, but a bit like what I said in the review, it's too vague. Too much is left up to the imagination. There needed to be more explanation. There needed to be more definitive answers. And Dread didn't give us a lot of answers. In fact, Dread didn't answer any of the questions from Metroid Fusion, if we're being completely honest. Were the animals infected at the end of the game? How did Adam become a computer? Are the Federation hunting Samus? What are they going to do now? None of that was addressed. The only thing that really followed on from Fusion, other than the X-Parasite, was Samus's suit and that whole techno-organic thing going on there. But everything else, it kind of retconned Fusion in a way, which, as a sequel, it should have done more, but the game is so fun and fantastic to play that it's really hard for me to be annoyed or too disappointed. I discredit the story in some ways, but I can't have too many negatives on it, because the overall experience is just so out of this world that, hey, it's a small price to pay. Going into the game, I was preparing myself. I was psyching myself up. I was saying to myself, look, at the end of the day, this is the story Nintendo wants to tell. And it's not necessarily going to line up with what you want to expect. It's not necessarily going to deal with the Federation or anything like that. But just know that this is the official story, and this is how it was always envisioned and intended to be. And it definitely paid off going into the game with that mindset, because if I went in with my expectations that I had beforehand, I probably would have been a bit more disappointed. But that being said, it's not like a bad story or anyway. It's, as I said in my review, there's still a lot of cool twists and jaw-dropping moments, like the whole monologue from Quiet Robe, Ravenbeak's reference to the Metroid manga at the end, which is absolutely insane. Little things like that just really get you thinking. Obviously, the whole Metroid DNA thing, that was really cool, but that was a pretty obvious thing we kind of all saw coming. But aside from the story, I don't have any negatives for the game, really. Everything is almost perfect. The only other negative I could potentially say is a bit of a nitpick, and that's that it's a bit too linear. But at the same time, it's necessary, because this is a modern Metroid game, and it's supposed to welcome in new players, and at the same time, if you go the old Super Metroid route, people are going to be too confused. They're going to put down the game. They're going to discourage their friends from buying the game. So I can understand and appreciate and acknowledge why Nintendo and Mercury Steam chose the more sort of linear route without it feeling too in your face. The game pushes you in the right direction without you even realizing it. It's subtle, and I think that's why it works, and that's why most people are pretty okay with it, I think. But where does it rank among the other Metroid games? Is it my favorite? It's a tough question to answer. For all the praise and all like the fantastic things Metroid Dread does, I'm more of a Metroid Prime kind of guy. I love the 2D games for what they are, but first person Metroid has the heart of it all. That's where Metroid really shines. Um, and I think not having something like the scan visor did kind of go to the detriment. If Metroid Dread had something like the scan visor where you could scan your environments and your enemies, it would have been even better. It's because something like that is missing. That's why I think I prefer first person Metroid. But again, Dread is so advanced and modern and plays in a way that the 3D games couldn't ever really do. So, from that point of view, yeah, it's better to control. It's more fun to play from that aspect. So, yeah, I guess I have to admit it. It's the best Metroid game. I have biases toward Metroid 2 and Zero Mission and the Prime games, but when I really think about the actual experience of sitting down and playing the game, what this does is just completely up and beyond anything else. And those other games were all phenomenal works as well, but it's I've never had that much fun with a game in a long, long time. And I'm very relieved because I had a bit of worry on the last few days going into October. What if the game disappoints? What if I'm one of the few that doesn't like the game and I end up hating it as much as Samus Returns or something? And I'm so thankful that they improved everything from Samus Returns. I'm wondering though if it will possibly change any of my opinions towards Samus Returns. Maybe I'll look at it more favorably now that we got Metroid Dread. We have a real Metroid game now. That could be a potential video I might delve into. Finally, to sort of end this off, what about the future of Metroid? Story-wise, gameplay-wise, how does this leave me feeling in terms of excitement for future games? I think Metroid's in a good place. Again, I'll do a completely separate video on this topic that I'll go fully in depth in soon, but to talk about it briefly here, Metroid Dread does so much right. There's very few things this game gets wrong, and I think Metroid is really heading in the right direction. Nintendo hit the nail on the head with this. They finally understand what makes a Metroid game. And I think, and I hope, that they're going to take what they did with Dread and run with it going forward. Expand upon the mechanics, add new movement options. And I'm pretty certain that's what Metroid Prime 4 will do as well. I'm pretty sure that game will do for the 3D games what Dread did for the 2D games. Combat and movement will probably be a big focus of 4. So I think Metroid, for the first time ever, is in a really good place going forward. And Dread has literally changed everything. We could potentially be going into a new era like the 2000s where we're getting Metroid games very frequently and they're all top quality. And I'm so thankful. So thankful that the game I've waited 8 years for, the game that was cancelled that I really wanted to play and theorized about, actually released, was as good as I ever dreamt it could be, and is pushing the series to new heights it would never have reached before in any other system in any other decade. So, to close this off, Metroid Dread is phenomenal. It is my game of the year. It's the best Metroid game. From a gameplay standpoint, from the pure experience, it's unrivaled. It's leagues above the others, and those were all phenomenal games as well. But there's a testament to Dread's quality of just how much it shines above the other games and how much it shines amidst the Metroidvania genre in the modern age. Dread showed why the Metroid part of Metroidvania is important, why Metroid deserves to be relevant, and how it still has a place in the modern gaming industry. And as I keep saying, I will be forever grateful that this game exists, and I cannot believe that 8 years of YouTube content finally comes to an end with this game. All the videos I've done over the years talking about Metroid Dread as a potential game, will we ever get it? When could we see it? And here I am in 2021, having played the game 6 times, beaten it 100%ed it, experienced everything that this game has to offer. And it's such a surreal feeling, but it's a moment in time that I'm going to look back and cherish many years from now. As a fan, it's going to be the moment I look back on and appreciate the most. Out of all the years I've been a fan, this was the most important moment. It was the most meaningful. And the fact that we got a game that was so incredible I feel ecstatic. Words can't really describe beyond that. But yeah, those are my final thoughts on Metroid Dread. 8 years, and there you go. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on Metroid Dread? Have you played it to completion? How does it rank compared to the other Metroid games? Was there anything you disliked? What were some of your favorite things? How do you feel about the future of the series? I want to hear everything you have to say down in the comment section below. And yeah, with that all said, thank you all for watching and please subscribe. Novskovies out.